Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast. Using my sportscasting background, I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players to gain more insight on what makes this team go. As the Detroit Lions enter a new gritty era, we'll look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we're going to talk about the hype train that most Lions fans are riding. Is this real? Is this the Polar Express where you have to see it to believe it? Or is this more like the Hogwarts Express where it's very cool, but it's still just a fantasy? Well, we're going to discuss various rankings about Lions players and positions as well.
Hi, everyone. This is Herman Moore, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
For the Hype Train episode, I felt like I needed a couple of guests to give you an assortment of perspectives. I'm joined today by James Cook, senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. You can hear him on the Get Around podcast. It drops on Mondays. Good to have you here, James.
Thanks for having me, man.
And also joining us today is Up North Live sports director Harrison Beebe. Thank you for joining us, Harrison.
Matthew, it's a pleasure. And wow, what great analogies for the rankings of potential hype trains. I couldn't have drawn it up better. Hollywood must be so proud.
Thank you. I came up with that all on my own, I will admit. The Lions ended the season with more excitement other than Kansas City winning the Super Bowl about any other team. You know, definitely more exciting than any of the other 17 that didn't make the playoffs. There's no denying expectations are at a high point from all over. Pro Football Talk recently had an article come out, and it said the Eagles are the favorites to win the NFC. But the Lions are the most popular bet, not to win the NFC North, to win the NFC. More than 36% of bets have been placed on the Lions to be the NFC champion. They've never even won their own division since it became the NFC North, yet people are looking at them to possibly win the conference. So, James, are you buying into this, and how do you feel about this hype?
I'm pretty leery of everything, being a Lions fan that's been, been hurt before. So it's an odd position to be in. And I don't quite know what to make of it. I mean, the other thing is Dan Campbell is like the odds-on favorite to win Coach of the Year this year, I think. As far as the betting community, 33% of money is on Dan Campbell to win Coach of the Year. So it's just weird how many people are on the Lions bandwagon.
How about you, Harrison?
Maybe it's weird, but I think that's part of the allure of the team is, I used to say back in the day when the Patriots were winning it over and over again, I was like, yeah, it's fun, but I'm kind of sick of seeing New England winning the AFC East every year and making the Super Bowl every year. So I think part of this enthusiasm for the Lions is probably hovering around the fact that the average NFL fan has been, just like the three of us well know, the Lions have been an afterthought, not even worth considering on your regular season schedule, much less putting money on in a wager of any kind. And so now that they do have this momentum and potential on their table, and this is obviously, I'll make this statement ahead, and this is probably one of the nicest compliments I'll ever give the Lions after giving up on them officially in 2015. But they are the new good-looking girl at the dance that you're kind of like, hey, let's get some background on this one and see, maybe this is the one worth betting on, and all this hype and excitement that's building up is something I want to get in on the ground floor of before it's really considered a regular.
Well, I hear both of you guys with your cautiousness, being leery, because as you said, Harrison, we're not used to this attention, right? This is a whole new thing for us. We were excited the way the season went last year as far as the wins at the end and how they were, compounding on top of each other. But we're not used to getting praise from other people outside of our state. And we kind of almost maybe don't know how to react to that.
Yeah, I mean, 4 primetime games, like the season opener. I mean, I knew they'd be in discussions for the season opener, but when they found out they put them in that spot, I mean, we're not kidding ourselves. That's a pretty big spot for the league to give the Lions. A, because of such a great season they just had, and B, because they legit think they're going to give Kansas City a great game. That is the point of that game. A lot of people just assume Kansas City is going to win, and I'm sure, projections wise, Kansas City is lined up to win a home game, ring night for them. Although some nights those are rough for the reigning Super Bowl champs, but There's a reason the Lions got that game, is because the league believes that that is the team worth putting some eyeballs on that you might normally wouldn't have wanted to do. Even in, I mean, we've seen some good Lions teams the past. We've seen the Lions in the playoffs the last 10 years. I think that 2014 team is still the best team to have never actually seriously made a run, but that team didn't come off that season with 4 primetime games in the season opener. So something about this team and this culture right now, the league is taking notice, and they're putting them in those spots. They're giving them those opportunities.
I am excited. I am optimistic about this Lions team. Not comfortable with all the attention that comes with it because it's something we've never had. But last year, the offense was really good, and the defense improved a ton in the second half. So, James, are you more optimistic about the offense continuing at the high level, or that the defense might continue to improve?
I think if they get the defense up to a level that's close to what the offense was last year, that's a lethal combination potentially. So, I mean, the offense was incredibly efficient last year. They got Ben Johnson back, so that's just a huge get for them to keep that continuity of him and Jared Goff. And they've only added a few more weapons here and there with Gibbs, with Laporta, getting Jamison Williams back after 6 games, and adding Green, some depth there, a wide receiver, and David Montgomery. So, I mean, I think the offense will be fine as long as the offensive line stays healthy and they have just a minimal amount of health on that team, and you don't get ravaged by injuries or something. But the offense I think will be fine. It's going to be interesting to see how this new defense comes together with so many new pieces.
For sure, a lot of new pieces on the defense. We've seen other teams in the past bring a lot of players together, and the results haven't always been what people have expected. The Lions have a lot of guys that are homegrown that are going to fit into that. But Harrison, what are you thinking on this aspect? Defense continuing to improve, or you think the offense has a better chance of staying where it's at?
So I think I've done a pretty good job so far of giving an optimistic look at this team as far as from my vantage point. This is the part that I think will be interesting to see this season. Obviously, the free agents moves were a very big step forward for this team. And as you just kind of hinted, those are still kind of wait and see approaches. You never know if those are for sure going to translate or not. But my brother-in-law brought up a good point. We were kind of talking a few months ago. He's like, this Lions team actually had it pretty good last year, avoiding serious injuries to really affect the performance. And kind of everybody, for the most part, I mean, we knew obviously DeAndre Swift was always going to be in and out of the lineup, and they took care of that problem already. But that to me is more of the interesting thing, because the offense, at the very least, even with the Williamson suspension or not, you expect the offense to hum along in a familiar spot. I think the running back position is upgraded with Montgomery. So you'd like to believe that Jared Goff and Ben Johnson, all of them, are on that same page where that system's going to run like it did last year. And as we all saw, it was one of the best in the NFL. The defense with all those new pieces, yes, that's got a lot of interest. I think that's where you're kind of really questioning what it's going to look like. So are we confident that they could put things together? Dan Campbell being, a very vocal leader of this group, and a lot of these guys joining this team for his vocal leadership and moxie, whatever adjectives you want to apply to everything he does on and off the field. But I think that's the biggest thing to look at is, can this team get through another season basically injury free, all the while gelling those new pieces together to make it translate into these projections that all these experts and gambling analysts have them at.
Well, you're right. They did avoid the injury to like the quarterback position or to Jamal Williams. You mentioned Swift was in and out. They did have some injuries at the wide receiver position, though, and some injuries on defense that did affect them a little bit. They got healthier as the season went on, but you're right.
But that's my point. So that's my point, though. Their stretch was down the end when guys were back in there. They struggled early without those guys. And then when those guys were in there, they started playing pretty good. So we saw what happened when they didn't have them, and we saw what happened when they got some back.
I would say I think the roster is going to be more talented this year than last year.
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
Yeah, and deeper, I think. Yeah, there's just a lot of more depth there all across the board. And I think part of it is to stay away from those injuries. I mean, last year, at wide receiver at times and at corner at times, they were signing guys off the street and starting them.
Tom Kennedy, right?
Yeah, guys off the practice. They were starting practice squad guys. And so they hope to avoid that this year. Of course, they made a lot of changes too to the strength and conditioning staff in the off season. Pretty well overhauled it. So hopefully that some kind of makes a difference too. I mean, they did have kind of a little rash there of guys having back injuries. So I wonder if they pin that on the strength and conditioning program that they had in place.
Well, training camp is going on. So we're not to preseason yet, but we have training camp happening. So I want to know where you guys stand right now. Vegas put out the over under at 9.5 on the Lions. Last year was 6.5. They won 9 last year. I was pretty confident they would beat that 6.5 before last season started. I think a lot of Lions fans were. But how are you feeling about that 9.5 this year?
If they're reasonably healthy, I don't see any reason for them not to win 10 games. I mean, 10-7 in a 17-game season is, not dominating or anything. So if they can avoid an injury to Jared Goff and otherwise stay reasonably healthy, I don't see any reason why they don't get 10 or more wins with this roster. The division is not incredibly strong. We don't even know what the other 3 teams in the division are going to be, really. I mean, is Justin Fields suddenly going to learn how to throw the football? Is Jordan Love a capable quarterback? The Vikings lost so many players in free agency and just having to cut guys for salary cap reasons that they're not the same team they were last year. So, I mean, the division's wide open.
You're exactly right. It is. There's a lot of question marks around a lot of those players. Some people love Justin Fields. Others not. A lot of Lions fans aren't so certain about that. Harrison, what are you thinking? 9.5. You've brought up some reservations, which are well received. What do you think? You think they're going to do it?
9.5 seems like a very attainable goal. Well, so 10. It seems like a very obtainable win total. I've been telling people this entire offseason, though, with this hype going on around this team, they've built it up within the fan base. You guys can agree or disagree with me. I'm curious of your thoughts. I think this season literally hinges on a pass fail of winning that playoff game. There is so much energy around this team right now and fan support. You are building everybody up to the point where this is going to become an expert, not just to get in and win the division, but to, obviously, if they win that division, they'll host the game at Ford Field, which would give them a huge leg up. But I think this season is a very big pass fail based on preseason expectations on them winning that one playoff game. That's all I'm saying. It's just win a wild card playoff game. You don't have to get to the conference finals. You don't have to get to the Super Bowl. But I think to make these fans feel like this whole resurgence right now and this positivity and the potential and the win totals and the game of totals, I think it all rests on that second weekend in January, whenever the wild card weekend is nowadays, with everything shifting around a bit. So that, and in a lot of ways you can screw that up early, or in a lot of ways you could look like a Money in the Bank in September and look like you're a Super Bowl favorite. So that'll be what we're kind of tracing along the season. But I really think the big moment that will define this team is ending that drought. I think I saw the other day on Twitter, guys, the last Lions playoff win, which was in 1992. We are now farther away from that than that season and that playoff was to the JFK assassination. So that's how far removed we are from a Lions playoff victory. And we all know the slumps that Detroit sports are having in general. So for this team to be by far and away the team that the city is hanging its hat on right now, and with this season, I think that's my bar for them to clear this year. They got to win that playoff game if they're going to make those fans feel like this was a real investment. Because you guys tell me, could they get in the playoffs and lose one? And are you going to have a little wah-wah feel, even because it's so easily? It seems like a very easy win for the division.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is a win a playoff game this year. I think it's what the fans definitely expect. I think anything short of that, they're going to consider a major letdown, barring like a Jared Goff injury, especially. Yeah, I think the Lions fans are just so, there's so many bandwagon fans, and the fans that have hung around for so long are so hard on this bandwagon that the expectations are almost out of proportion, which is another reason why I'm very cautiously optimistic, because I just think that fans just, there's people talking Super Bowl, that, they need to win the Super Bowl this year. And I'm just like, whoa.
Yeah, those fans are really setting themselves up for failure if you're doing that.
Pump the brakes.
Well, if you want to put things into perspective here, The last time there was this much excitement about the Lions, I don't think cable television existed. Okay. So it's been a long time. And you're right, Harrison. There is so much hype around this team that you almost have to win the division because everyone says we're going to. You're going
Well,
to
but
host that playoff
that's the
game.
thing with my scenario. You don't even have to win the division. I don't care if they don't win nobody remembers who wins the divisions, but people will remember if they win that playoff game.
Right. So
So
you don't
that's
care whether they win the NFC North or not. You just want them to win a playoff game in the first round.
that's my bar for them. They could be underwhelming in the season, but if they win that playoff game, I think they've achieved what should be the goal for this team this year.
My initial thought was win the NFC North and win that first home playoff game. Obviously, it's easier to win a playoff game if you're at home, but I'm going to agree with all the hype that's been put on. Winning a playoff game, just one, is probably the bar for measuring success for this team.
All right, good. We're all on the same page.
All right, well, let's look at some position rankings and get your thoughts on this. USA Today has Jared Goff ranked as the 15th best quarterback. There's 32 of them. They've got Justin Fields, Geno Smith, and Kirk Cousins just below him, actually just above him, all ranked better than him. And then Tua, Dak, and Stafford are like 9, 10, and 11. The guys coming in just after him are Watson, Purdy, and Daniel Jones. Pro Football Focus puts our running back group middle of the tier, like number 16 in the NFL. The Bleacher Report put our running backs at number 7. I'm kind of looking at all these things that are coming in. Some people care about them. Some people are complaining the Lions are getting disrespect in the rankings. You know, you can look at the Madden rankings that came out about some of the players. Should we pay attention to the national media about this? Do you care about where Jared Goff ranks or where our running backs rank?
I mean, did anybody care about where they ranked last year? And they still were one of the hottest teams in the second half, the hottest teams to keep tabs on. So I think if that's shown us anything, yeah, it's fun preseason talk and discussion and way to get clicks on your website or hits on your tweets or whatnot. But at the end of the day, Jared Goff doesn't care where he's ranked in the quarterback bills. I mean, we don't know what to expect, in my opinion, from this running back duo. Jahmyr Gibbs is a very talented running back, but it's his rookie year in the NFL. Like, we're not suddenly expecting him to go off for 15 touchdowns and 1,000 yards guaranteed. Obviously, he has the chance to do that, especially with this old line, but it's a transition in the backfield. So that's going to have its growing pains. Hopefully, most of those take place during those first few months or weeks in August. But especially with Dan Campbell leading this team, he seems like one of those coaches that is the least excited about where position player rankings are and is just assumed throw the chips on the board, the guys in the field, and let it all solve itself.
Right. He doesn't even care where they're drafted, what round. It's whoever's going to do the best is the person that's going to go out there. So I don't care about these rankings. I actually think they're a bit of a distraction, a little bit of noise. I think some of it adds to the whole, hey, look how good the Lions are going to be, and I'm ready for them to just go away and kind of look at training camp. How about you, James?
Yeah, I don't know that the players. Some players use this stuff for fuel. I mean, we've seen the Amon-Ra St. Brown story about how he keeps the list of all the receivers who were drafted ahead of him, and he even trash talks them when they meet head to head in games and stuff. But aside from an individual thing like that, I don't know that the Lions organization really cares about these rankings. That Geno Smith is ranked ahead of Jared Goff, which I don't know that I can really agree with too much, but at the end of the day, I don't really care.
Fair enough. Those rankings do not give you wins.
Maybe
Right,
in Madden they do.
And Madden, they might help and make your guy a little quicker. Well, guys, training camp is going on. So what is one thing that you think you need to see by the end of training camp, whether it's in camp or during the preseason games? What do you need to see to feel good that you think the Lions are got it together?
I mean, health is obviously the number one thing on your chalkboard, kind of. But I would like to see them have used Jahmyr Gibbs a little bit in the preseason to get him into the offense and get him comfortable, and so that he can kind of hit the ground running game one. I think that's going to be pretty decent. Same thing with Laporta, and hopefully they let this defense play together at least a little bit. Basically a whole new secondary. Like Kirby Joseph is basically the only guy from last season in the secondary. Those guys have to play together a little bit if you're going to play any kind of zone coverages to get some kind of cohesion.
Yeah, to piggyback off that, obviously we all are impressed with the offense last year and hopefully into this year, even with some of those changes and suspensions and whatnot. But defense had a lot of question marks around it last year, especially early on with those high scores that they would let up. So it'd be nice to see, it is only preseason, so it doesn't really matter too much, but it'd be nice to see if that defense could click and leave some lower points on the board early on, give you that optimism that, hey, yeah, these guys are going to go into these games determined to stop the football from moving down the field.
All right. I think the defense, seeing some improvement there would be encouraging. Like you said, even if it's just for a series or two in a preseason game. I'm looking at that wide receiver and running back room. That's where I'm kind of looking. So I want to see Jamison Williams get some meaningful reps in preseason games, see him start catching the ball a few times in the game. And I want to see Jahmyr Gibbs. I want to see what he does on the field and see how the Lions are going to use him. Obviously, they're not going to show a lot during the preseason of how they're going to use him, but the Lions are relying on some rookies between Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta. They're hoping both of those guys can help out when Jamison Williams is out those 6 games.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit it on the head for the offense. We can trust Goff as long as he's healthy, but we especially with that suspension and with Gibbs being so new I mean, let's face it, it's not a guarantee that Montgomery's just going to slide right in and be as productive as Jamal Williams was. That's going to take some, and hopefully they get all of that figured out in the 3, 4, 5 weeks of training camp as well. Because as I said earlier in this podcast, I really like David Montgomery. I think makes the backfield even better than with Jamal Williams, and we all know what he did last year. But yeah, getting those key pieces that are new to really click and ride along this train, that will be of the utmost importance for the Lions down there in Allen Park. Are you going down for some preseason stuff, Matt?
I am. I haven't figured out the final schedule, but I'll definitely be going down for 2 training camps and at least 1 preseason game. Well, before we get out of here, we wrap this thing up. Any last thoughts you guys wanted to share?
It's just kind of how the offseason goes. Everybody, it was really bubbling over back in January when they, probably should have made the playoffs, but because of who was it, Seattle that won earlier in the day, they were eliminated. So a lot of that's been bubbling over since that Sunday in early January, where everybody thought the Lions should have at least gotten a fair shake in that playoff. And so wait till next year. Well, here we are on the doorstep of next year. And I think it's settled a little compared to all the talk, but as we all know, as football fans, in a few weeks here, especially come that week in September leading up to the Chiefs game, that's going to come right back to the boiling point again. So that's kind of the intrigue now, is to see how they handle this plateau, and now getting hyped for what will hopefully for their sake be a 2023 season that ends in a playoff victory.
All right, James, anything to add?
No, I mean, like you said, like you kind of start off with, just the hype train around the Lions is crazy, and even among the fans who have been following this team, that they just seem to be so re-energized and everything. When training camp tickets went on sale, a guy posted a screenshot of Ticketmaster where he was 2,761st in line to get tickets to Lions training camp.
I thought training camp tickets were free.
They are, but you still have to go get them through Ticketmaster.
Oh, okay.
So he was over 2,700 in line to get the free tickets to go to training camp.
So since I've heard Ticketmaster is just awful for everything, Taylor Swift or otherwise, do you have to pay fees to get tickets through Ticketmaster then, even if they're free?
No, not for this. You did not.
Okay.
I would hope not.
So Ticketmaster is doing this all for free. Wow, I can't believe it. They're not a sponsor of yours, are they, Matt?
I don't have any sponsors.
Well, then good.
But hey, if there are any potential sponsors out there listening and you want to be the first, email me, Matthew@notthesameoldlions.com. James and Harrison, thank you both for joining the show. Remember, you can catch James on the Get Around podcast. That drops on Mondays. Also, check out his work at record-eagle.com. You can catch Harrison's work at upnorthlive.com. What about you? Are you on the Detroit Lions hype train, full speed ahead? Is this more like the Polar Express, that seeing is believing with that 9.5 game over-under? Or is this the Hogwarts Express, and finding that platform 9 3/4 is something you just don't think the Lions are destined to do this year? I think they're going to do some good things, but would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks. Please subscribe to Not the Same Old Lions podcast to get alerts about new episodes. Tell your friends about the show. You can follow me on Twitter at MattSoltesiak. The show is also available on YouTube and at notthesameoldlions.com. Until next time, stay gritty, my friends.